Good day, Trader's Edge with high-tech trading analysis. This morning I'd like to do just a brief update to the features that have been added to my DrawBar since the last video. I believe I have 2 support videos on my website, demonstration videos of the DrawBar. And as time goes on, this continually seems to evolve. So I'm going to take a little time this morning to explain some of the features that have been added since those last videos. As always, this is kind of a little just presentation workspace. I'm looking at 4 charts. All of them are the same instrument. Each chart is of a different time frame. Each tab represents a different instrument. And because of an add-on that I have, I'm able to click on a tab of any chart and all of my other charts will change accordingly. But again, that's a different indicator. I just want to explain what we're looking at. Okay, a 5-minute crude chart. Now, what wasn't in the DrawBar originally was the ability to hide and show the bar at will. Yes, we could hide it and show it through our icon up here by middle clicking it, which is no longer available. Now we have an icon. I put an icon up here in the left-hand part of your chart. Well, we can put this across the top or down the side, but I add a little icon that if we click it, we show it. If we click it, we hide it. Makes things nice, simple, and neat. That would go same for the color style bar below. Okay, so we draw simple things on our chart. As with all of the objects in the bar, the right-click context menu of each object might have changed. Some things might have been rearranged, some things added. For instance, I just drew a rectangle on the chart. If I left-click it to select it and then right-click it, I get a context menu that I'm able to, on the fly, change the properties of this particular object. The context menu will be different depending on the object that is being drawn. If I was drawing a horizontal line, I wouldn't have extend right or extend left because a horizontal line's already extended both ways. Many of these will be across objects, some of them will be unique. In this particular case, I can extend my rectangles. I can show price labels over here to the right. I've got a tick offset, which is the number of ticks between this line and current price. Now, I'm only going to explain this on this one draw object, as most of them have the same type of properties available to them. For rectangles, at the start of the rectangle, I allow you to place a dot and use dot labels. I drew this the wrong way to see that. Let's draw that up here on this one just so that you can see the labeling. We've got a tick offset, the dollar amount for that particular instrument, the time that it was drawn, and the price. Now, if we right click on that, we can hide all of that. We can show it. Anything that has a dash underneath it means that it is associated to the property right above it, meaning I'm highlighting show dot labels. If I left click that, everything below it is going to be hidden as well. I have to show the dot labels to show any of the other properties below it. Once that's shown, I can turn whatever on and whatever off I want to see. I also have the ability to load and save templates. So I get this the way I want it. I can come down and say save, new, create a new template, rather than having to double click it, going to the object properties and doing it that way. So once I have my templates saved, I can come up and I'm going to draw a rectangle, and this is just my default template for my rectangle. But once I have that, if I already have a template loaded, I could just, oh, already exists. Excuse me. That was save. I meant to load it. Load my red template, and it's going to change it to whatever the configurations are for that template. This far right, if we hover over any of our icons, it will give you a tooltip to tell you what that item is. So meaning no matter what I draw on my chart, if I left click this, it's going to remove all of those draw objects. Okay, now this has always been on the DrawBar. I believe it's always been on the far right, but it will always be on the far right of your DrawBar now. In addition to what I've done here now, instead of left clicking, I can now right click on that object. Now we've added the ability to delete any specific one type of draw object. In this case, I've got a horizontal line. We'll say I had a bunch of them on here with all of my other drawings on the chart, and all I want to do is get rid of all of my horizontal lines. Getting rid of that one is not an issue. I left click on it, and to select it, I either hit the delete key or right click and remove. But if I had 10 of them on there along with a bunch of other objects on there, it is kind of a pain. We can now right click on our remove all. Remember, if we left click, we delete everything on the chart without being prompted. Come down to my HT horizontal line. I now remove that every horizontal line, not just that one, every horizontal line off my chart. And to show you that it did that, let's just draw a couple. So now I have all of these, right click, let's get rid of all the horizontal lines, and everything else remains on my chart. That is a nice addition that is rather new. Okay, let's get rid of all of the objects on my chart. Our icon in NinjaTrader's toolbar. This is the DrawBar icon. Oh, I need to add a tooltip to that. If I left click that icon, it will bring up all of the available draw objects that we can place in the DrawBar above. Okay, so I'm only going to cover the last couple objects because these are the last things that were either been added or kind of extensive feature changes. But what I wanted to mention here is whatever I have selected here is what I'm going to be showing in the DrawBar. Is going to be the same thing that I'm showing in my context menu. If it is not selected to be in the drawing bar, it will not be available in the right click remove. It's just going to assume that if you don't have it in the drawing bar, that you're not going to be using that object to have to remove it. Plus, it's a quick, easy way so that if you've got only a couple things in here, there'll only be a couple things here, and you won't have to be confused with everything, with all of the objects that are available. You can see here, I give you the opportunity to use my custom risk reward tool and or the default risk reward tool. Now, speaking of that, that wasn't something that I believe I covered in the original video and have had a lot of questions about that. Let's talk about that for just a second. This icon here is HT Risk Reward. It's a custom risk reward tool. So let's just say that that I have this area right here that I'm looking at to fade to continue down to the short term. Like with the default risk reward, if I left click once where I want my entry to be and I start dragging, you're going to say, oh, what's going on? This all really came about from a customer request. A customer was looking for a risk reward tool that he could scale in to a position. So in this case, and this is all just hypothetical, right? Our first entry was at our bottom line. Let's say our second entry was right in the middle or just above the middle. I left click again. And then our risk is above the zone. So what this is telling me by default is that from my first entry to my risk is 11 ticks. From my second entry to my risk is 6 ticks. So I have 11 and 6. If I were to do something like this, I have 17 ticks of risk and $170 at risk based on these two entries at these 2 points and this risk. The lines are telling me a target multiple of those risks. And that is going to be based on whatever target multiplier that you set up in the drawing tool itself. By default, it's set up for 3. So when I enter my risk, by default, it's showing me the target 3 times the multiple of my first line and 3 times the multiple. Well, let's just look at this. This is 11 ticks worth of risk. We've got 33 tick target. We've got a 6 tick risk. We've got an 18 tick target. Now again, I can go inside this tool and set that risk reward multiplier up to be whatever I want. Save that as a default temp. Now you say, well, I don't need that. Well, let's nuke that. Let's just nuke everything on our chart just for the time being. And let's just do the same thing again. If I wanted a normal 1 in, 1 out, just left click where you want to enter. Left click again without moving your mouse. Left click again. Now you'll notice that both lines are at the same level and you're only going to get 1 risk and 1 reward. It was the easiest way to set something up for dual purposes. I've got stay in draw mode on, so 1 click for my first entry, another click at the same spot, place my risk, there's my reward. Now let's talk about some of these, some of the new additions. A new addition would be my zone drawing tool. And I call it a zone drawing tool because if I left click that, like any of these, and come down, if I left click above or below any bar, whatever bar I happen to be on, let's pick this one. If I left click, it's going to draw a zone around the wick of that candle. Now, it is not there completely yet. I have to left click one more time to make it stay. So it doesn't matter whether I left click the second time above it or anywhere on the chart. I just have to left click again to say, okay, that's there. Now, the reason that I still have a pencil on my screen is I'm in stay and draw mode. I right click anytime in stay and draw mode gets me out of stay and draw mode. But I'm just going to do this again. We're going to get rid of all of that. We're going to turn stay and draw mode off. We're going to draw another zone. We're going to come over to our bar and we're going to left click the bar that we want to highlight. Now, left click anywhere. Again, I could have just left click again real quick as long as that is where I wanted that zone to be drawn. Now, the reason why that I cause you to have to use a second click is that when our chart is scrunched like this, and we go in to use this tool and I want to draw a zone right here on this red bar right there, oops, I missed. Kind of touchy, but because you have to left click on the chart a second time, that's not going to be there just yet. If I right click, it just never even ends up on the chart. And the reason why I do that is because if I came over here and did this, if I just automatically put it there on the first check, well, this wasn't the bar I was really looking at highlighted. Now to get rid of this, I've got to come in, I've got to select it, and I've either got to hit my delete key or right click and remove, or come up and remove it through my draw objects removal. But if I do it this way, that removes them all. It's just kind of a pain. So we left click it. We try to find our bar. If we don't, we right click and we have to try again. Left click again anywhere and it's on the chart. It's a lot easier than I make this out. And if I turned my cursors on, it would probably make things a lot easier as well. But simple as that. I say simple. This is still a little convoluted in that that's why I ended up creating an indicator called double click zones, which does a very similar thing. If you do a lot of that, you might want to go look at that. But this is kind of the best I could do with a drawing object manually placed on the chart. Same thing I believe applies to these. I meant to click twice. If we right click, we can show price labels, tick offsets, and a target multiple. So we put a range here, or we've drawn this as our support area of where we're going to get in. This is my risk, about 14 ticks, plus or minus. If I want to look at when this comes back up and what I would be looking for a target, I could show various targets. I allow you to show 3, both above and below the zone. If we go into the drawing tools themselves, we can see that our target multiples are entered here in our drawing tool. So we can set those, even though this is a 14 tick risk type zone, and this down here would be 3 times that. So that would be what, 42? And this would be 5 times that and 7 times that. And I can set that to however I want. The next one over is the volume profile tool. If we left click on that and I left click on the chart, I start to draw a volume profile. And if I go right or left, I'm looking at the volume within the region that is being drawn on the chart. So in this instance, I started here at this with this green bar, and I went through all of the bars, and this is the volume profile, the value area, the midpoint, the POC, the low and the high, and the volume histogram for this period of time. Now, this by default is only looking at the volume of this bar, meaning I'm taking the volume of whatever data series is on this chart in that bar, and I'm dividing that equally between the high and the low of that bar. We're not actually counting tick by tick at a particular price level, not within this particular drawing object. To do that, you'd need to load tick data in doing that. I have other tools that will allow you to do that if you need something that precise. When we right click on this, just like all of the other drawing tools, we have some properties that we can configure. I can turn the histogram on and off if I so choose, or I can turn any of these values on and off, or I can extend these values, and I say short means I will extend the values from the beginning to the end of the drawn region, or to the last bar on the chart, whichever comes first. Or I can extend these far. And whatever levels I'm displaying here will extend to the far right part of your chart. The midpoint, 50% projections, 100%. Here's the 50. And what we're doing by that is showing you the time axis 50, meaning we have this period of time between here and here, and to the forward and to the back, I'm showing you half of that period of time, and or this would be equidistant since we're showing the whole. Just like you would with a rectangle, only instead of showing it from a price label standpoint, you're showing it from a time label standpoint. Very crude type of profile, but I find it a little more usable than the default. Some people don't have access to that. So as with all of the drawing objects now, as I mentioned, some of these have changed. I've added a duplicate in there. I'm not sure if the duplicate was there, the copy remove. What I am noticing right here is my templates aren't available with this particular object, but I'll look into that. If we go one left from that would be my newest addition, a Harmonics drawing tool, XABCD. Something to help identify Gartleys, butterflies, bats, that type of harmonic type of signal. Well, here, let's do this. If I bring this over, we'll add, a type of butterfly pattern here. We have an XABCD. Based on the retracement levels of this is going to depend on the pattern. That's something somebody shared with me some time ago. Let's look at this one. I'm just trying to find something offhand. There looks like one that's completed. So we look at drawing from our low, which is our X, to our high, which is our A. From the pattern that we just looked at from our butterfly, we're looking for a 78.6 retracement. Well, we've got that, 78.6. It actually went a little more, but pretty picture perfect. Now we're looking for a retracement of this leg of at least 38.2 up to 88.6, which defines our C point. We're between that. So now they're saying our projection there should be down towards 127 or 161. So if we come down to, let's just say 127.2 is almost a picture perfect. Outside of our little, range bound here before it came off, the percentages of the ratios of the retracements, the pullbacks, the corrections, whatever word you want to use for that, all line up for that pattern. So this tool is a 5-point tool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there isn't anything as far as properties available to this. Again, this is extremely new drawing object. Probably will be adding something to do with turning on and off various text labels and various different things. I don't know. Okay, let's get rid of that. A very similar tool. Let's see if I can find one. Well, we actually have one drawn on the same leg. This would be what I would consider an ABC tool, ABCD tool. What we're looking at here is we've got an A to B, B to C, and now we're looking at our extensions or projections. We're looking at our projections of equal. A to B equals C to D, 100%. And then I give you multiple levels down and a couple areas up, and let me try to explain them for you pretty quick. A, B, C. once we draw A to B, I am automatically showing you the retracement area between 38.2 and 61.8. That's the highlighted region up here. The highlighted region above that would be 78.6 to 88.6. So in the butterfly pattern we were just looking at, we need a retracement up into this area or it's not a butterfly. This is probably covered in the other video. What isn't covered is I've added some extensive right-click context menus and various other properties to be able to turn on and off all of the price labels that were here. I believe by default, if you draw it, it's going to look something like this. A to B, B to C. This is showing you price. This is showing you this is a tick offset from price, like everything else. Tick offset. This is the range from A to B. Price levels. This tool was stagnant like this originally. I needed something that wasn't so busy, just to be quite honest with you. It's just a matter of the flexibility of being able to turn whatever you want to see on and off. We set that up as templates, and then now it's as easy as coming down and saying, well, I don't want that one on there. I want my red one on there because that was different, or I draw that and I want a different template, and makes going back and forth between any type of Fibonacci, whether it be my custom drawing tools here or even, normal Fibonacci. From a Fibonacci standpoint, people use all kinds of different levels. NinjaTrader doesn't really make a good way, select a particular level and say hide or show, not without some complex coding. But if I had drawn this on my chart from a certain point and I wanted to see this a different way, if I wanted to look at this as the normal way, I would put a normal fib on it. Or if I wanted to look at this as my risk reward tool, you can use a Fibonacci for that. And now I can quickly and easily make that happen. The same thing for the custom fib tool. We were going from here to here. This shows us the same type of thing that our ABCs do. It shows us the retracement down to 38.2 and 61.8. Shows us the next region down to 78.6 to 88.6, and then shows us the 127 and the 168. The difference between this 127 is this is based on, we'll call this an AB leg. If we look at this particular tool and we have the drawback, our 100 and our 127 is based off our C leg, not our B leg. Again, the biggest thing on this is the properties now that are added so that you can turn things on and turn things off and show things the way you want. There is one more thing I'd like to talk about real quick, and that's chart markers. A couple updates ago, I added custom chart markers. If we go in and look at the selectable icons, you can see that under markers now, only my custom markers are available. Now, let me try to explain the difference in what I did with mine. I'm going to draw a couple on the chart real quick. At the same time, I'm going to draw a custom or just a normal one. Okay, I have two normal, two of mine, both above and below. As we scrunch our chart or our time axis to get longer and longer or shorter and shorter, you can see the two down arrows here in between. These are the default down arrows. You can see how they are getting much smaller as we scrunch our chart. Now they will only get so small, but that's about their minimum size. Now watch mine. As we unscrunch our chart, those middle default markers are going to start getting bigger and bigger. Now you can see mine are getting a little bigger, but not much. They're remaining the same size no matter how many bars I'm looking at on my chart. Once we unscrunch this, the default markers get huge. Now, you might like that. You might not like that. I didn't like that. So I added a couple properties and just give you the ability to say the minimum size of my marker is going to be this and the maximum size of my marker is going to be this. And no matter where I'm scrunched on my chart, you've got a min and max size now that you can set that up for. If you wanted that to be the same size, no matter how you were looking at your chart, you would just set up the same number in both slots. That's about it. I might have missed a couple things in case I don't want to take too much time. These always take too much time. Thanks for your day. Everybody take very good care.